All right, Carol, then good evening. It's great to see you.
Good to see you.
So maybe just to get started, why don't you tell me about a pivotal moment in your career as a trainer, consultant, leader, coach?
Okay. I was actually thinking about this. I think there have been several, but the one I think that was the most significant and brought me much more into understanding behaviors was in around about the early 80s, maybe 83, 84, where I was promoted from being a single entity. I was a prosecutor for the government. So I was promoted from that to run a department of about 95 people, all of mixed race and mixed levels of ability and so on. And I think that was the first pivotal moment for me when I realized that what I had been involved in when I was a teenager, which I think I've talked to you about before, when I was selected to be part of a behavioural project at Oxford University, where they check to see what your likely career path might be based on a whole load of questions you answered. I think I suddenly began to make the leap from that to the whole people aspect, not about me and my career and what my skills or even behaviours might be. It was just understanding how to understand the behaviours of people. Why weren't they getting on? It wasn't just ethnicity. What could I do as a leader? So that was the pivotal moment when I realised that leadership was much more about me serving the way I served the people to become good at what they were doing, to give me the results I was required to deliver. And in fact, while I was thinking about that, I dug out the book here. I found this. Look at all the tags still on it after all these years.
Oh, wow.
It's called The Personal Management Handbook, How to Make the Most of Your Potential. And it was written by a professor at the University of Surrey in England. And it was published in 1988. So it was probably around about that time I heard about it. But this is the first time it really took me into the depths of who I am. The government anyway profiled me all the time. They always did with key leaders. All the ones we know about, Myers-Briggs and Belbin and all those kinds of things. But none of them said, there was always that, so what? Yeah, okay, so you've told me what my behaviors are, but so what? How do I apply them? And this book began to really focus into all those kinds of areas, developing my capabilities, communication, managing myself effectively and those kinds of things. And then I went on to, which I think I've seen you've got as well, the Bob Burford book.
Yep.
So that he had two of those. And so I think the pivotal thing was moving from being a single entity to having to understand how to manage a very significant size department of people who were themselves different and diverse. And there was no way I could lock myself in the manager's, my room. I had to be in there getting my hands dirty and figuring out how to make them work as a team. So that was my pivotal moment where I began to spend much more time trying to understand and lock down behaviors and how they're applied.
So what did you learn about yourself at that moment? Because that's quite a significant step, going from, in a way, managing yourself to managing 95 people overnight.
Yes. And it literally was overnight. One of the things which is quite interesting, as I look back over my career, and this has been good, I think, for me to do this, is I have responded well to my leader, and I put you in that category as well. And my leader, a guy called Gordon Hodgson, was very releasing, very releasing, like you could do it, go for your life, that kind of attitude. But there was still that feeling of if I thought, yeah, but I don't know actually, Gordon, what to do, he would then be very, very clearly talk about it and give me guidance. But on a personal level, one of the things it made me realize is, firstly, I had to get involved, because I would rather not. I'd rather just, have one-on-ones or small groups, but I had to walk the floor of this very large department. But it also threw me back to that very first time when I was at Oxford University in this project, where it talked about, one of the things that came out of it was to find professions where I was involved in advocacy of some description and critical thinking. And until some years ago, I actually had that report. I have no idea where it is now, but so I began to realize the importance of advocacy. I was an encourager. If I were to use it wisely, it would actually work, but I'd have to figure out how to do it, one-on-ones or one-on groups or whatever. And then the critical thinking part was, there is always an answer to a problem. I'm not going to stick to, even if it's a government department, I'm not sticking to the rules. If it means that we can get around this, we can always fix something. And I think that more than anything, those two things more than anything, I think actually caused me success. I was able to turn the department around, and I had a boss that supported me. So from that, I think many, many more opportunities from the 80s came my way, because I'd understood that I have a skill of advocacy and of critical thinking, and was being a little bit provocative in using them. And that came to more senior people's notice. I mean, using them successfully. If it had all gone pear-shaped, I don't think we'd be having this conversation now. But I think that was, and that has been my life, I think, afterwards, is from as far as we're concerned, I'm an encourager and I'm spontaneous, but the spontaneity is not irresponsible. It's, let's try something new. Let's go down that path. It doesn't look as though it's right, but let's have a go at that. We can always retrofit it if it's not right. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, no, I think so. I think what I picked up out of that, though, Carol, was also, which was going to be really in a way my next question, in terms of your standout talents, being advocacy. I think I was hearing that as an advocate for people on the team, as the encourager, and then the ability to solve problems, and think out of the box on solving problems, which really plays into your creativity.
Yes, it does.
That's what I was hearing.
Yes,
out of this, and that's what made you successful in being a servant leader to these 95 people in the team.
Yes, and brought my way many, many more opportunities that were unexpected, but added to my portfolio of opportunities and skills and so on. So yes, so that was my kind of.
So Carol, just going further with that, in what situations do you feel you're the most confident that you can be? Carol Pocklington is confident.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping you would not ask me that. Generally speaking, I am weak in confidence, simply because I think this is where this reserved thing comes in, and it's getting worse as I get older. I know that for a fact. I think I've been knocked too many times, and therefore I'm less able to put myself forward. I think confidence for me absolutely comes to the fore one-on-one with somebody who is either struggling with an issue or wants to use me as a sounding board. So the whole coach mentor thing. I mean, as I think I've talked before, I've got about 8 young women. They're not young anymore. that I've coached, mentored, been in my world for probably one of them for 30 years. So, if they have a problem even now in their life, they call me and we have a conversation. And I don't have all the answers, but I'm a listening ear. So, I think to answer your question, my confidence, yes, it's interesting. I did a talk not so long ago to some leaders, and they said something that I thought it was quite interesting. How do you manage to walk into a room of people you don't know and actually speak to them? And I thought that was an interesting question to ask, because it's not easy for me, but it's what I do. It's not who I am. So I'm good at what I do. That's why I can do that. But it's not who I am. And so if my confidence is in my environment. My environment needs to be a place where, well, I can give you an example of work. There is no and forgive me if I shouldn't say this, but it was tricky to work with the lady before Leon. It is not tricky to work. Leon is a very strong leader. I mean, he calls a spade, but he has a way of encouraging and absolutely insisting you've got an answer to this. Let me know what it is. Pulling it out of me, and I find that incredibly helpful. Because there's a lot that goes on at work that I don't have the technical skills for. I mean, Ryan is really good with me, but there are times when I think I have no idea, Ryan, what you're talking about. Could you just put it into a different language? So I know my limitations, but they know me, and I think that's given me the confidence to be part of the team, and the way they call on me to help them with things, I find really helps me and builds confidence. Does that answer your question?
I mean, technology is not supposed to be your thing.
No.
What we're all wanting from you is just your experience, and the fact that you've been working in the area of human behavior, whether it's helping us design our systems or coaching people, leading teams, since the 1980s is,
yes,
that's the experience I think that we're after. But I think what I was hearing, Carol, is where you're the most confident is when you're working one-on-one with someone and helping them solve a problem.
Absolutely.
And being their sounding board, and that perhaps standing up and doing presentations is really a secondary thing for you. And I think being part of a team is something that is I can see is important. I think that's similar for Leon as well. Actually, Leon likes to be part of a team and not a lone ranger, whereas probably I'm the one who can handle being a lone ranger if needed.
Yes. And I think that's a really interesting point, because there's no question Leon has pulled me in, given where I live and the difficulties of remote working. He has absolutely, unequivocally pulled me into the team. He references me as part of the management team. He asks my opinion about things. And and I noticed this morning listening to the meeting, it was 8 years, but there's no question from day one, he took that on board. And I think he very quickly recognized that I don't give opinions. And so he created an environment in which I want you to, and I require you to have opinions and to throw them in, whatever they are. And I am utterly grateful for that. That's made a lot of difference to remote working. If we were in an office, it wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, although Leon is not Leon's style is an initiator and yours is, Carol, a facilitator, there's a lot of similarities actually between you and Leon in that sense. So that I think makes it easier to work together because he's extremely collaborative.
Yes.
Like you guys are, and that's why, like you are, and that's why I leave you all alone to have your meetings and do the things you do, because that's the best thing. If that works for you guys, and that's good, I think.
Yes.
But you know, I think as part of this discussion, what's you know become very clear is your ability to nurture people. Or you know, you've used the word advocate, but nurture them, encourage them to success, and use your problem-solving skills is probably a great strength. And you don't need to be extroverted in any way to do that.
No.
Being reserved is quite okay for that.
Yeah.
You know, for particularly those one-on-one settings. You know.
Yes, and I must say that for a long time I beat myself up a bit about that until I first met you. You know, I'd always been seen as the one who can stand up on a stage and speak to hundreds of people, but nobody knew the amount of preparation that had to go into that to actually make me walk out on that stage. And so the more successful I became at something I was good at, they assumed that's who I was. And nobody, I mean, I would never stay behind and talk to people. I'd be gone. You know, I'd done my bit and been polite and go. And until I really got to understand the degree of being reserved and that's okay, and how that sits quite well with being marginally engaging as well, I think that helped me help others to realize that once I knew about myself, and particularly in the area of, you know, like critical thinking, you know, it's okay to have an idea that could be a bit out of left field if it resolves the issue we've got right now. Let's talk about that. I think once I began to realize that spontaneity wasn't just being irresponsible, that it could actually be something else. I think those were big, on a personal level, I think those were big changes for me to understand and to be able to pass on to others.
Yeah, I mean, remember being spontaneous is you know, there's a lot of strengths that come with it in terms of being intuitive, flexible, being able to wing it at the right moment. You get asked a question, you can come up with a response. You know, being intuitive, I think people pass judgment a little bit on it because it could seem to some chaotic or disorganized, but you know, never have you been late for a meeting or been chaotic or disorganized. You know, so you manage it well, and it's a strength. You know, it's as much a strength as anything else. I think that there's, you know, for you with the reserved part, like perhaps there is a little bit for me, there's a story to tell out there about the fact that you are reserved, that you're standing up in front of people and talking and communicating in your area of strengths. And I think that's something that you could, as part of your confidence building, you could actually do that, and just take it head on. Sometimes I think it's taking those things and looking them in the eye and saying, you know what, I am reserved. It's okay. This is how a reserved person does it, and I think you will inspire a lot of people by doing that who are sitting there shy to get up and have a go.
Yes, that's true.
And so, and that could be, you know, empowering a lot of people. There's a lady out there, Susan Cain, who's written a book called Quiet.
Yes, I've read that.
And she's got all sorts of stories about successful people who were reserved, and they've stepped up outside their comfort zone, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
But it's not going to necessarily always be their day job. You know, still your power is being reflective, thinking through things, putting them together, which works well for a lot of what you've got to do. But I think, you know, I think embracing it might help with the confidence part of that, but without you having to become an extrovert, you know, because that's not That's not what's expected.
Mm.
And when you realize that as many, if not more people who are successful are introverted, I think that's the answer.
Yes, true.
That are reserved. I look at Ryan, as Ryan has grown, from being a student and very young to, now a very accomplished, still young executive. He loves presenting because he's able to communicate something very critical that he's built, which is our systems.
Mm.
And you're able, Carol, to communicate wisdom really well because that's what you've got a lot of.
Mm.
Having worked in this area in the Thatcher government, in the public service with lots of consulting companies, when we first met, you were doing team building work for IBM and Cathay Pacific and whatnot. You've seen everything, right?
Oh, yes.
You have. And so I think that's probably some of the answer. And I think the other part of where, what we're doing with these identity interviews is, what is your identity? And I think that's coming down to, where's your greatest impact? And so out of what we've discussed today, maybe just summarize for me what you think, where you see your greatest impact, not just for DNA, but also generally speaking in the community.
Okay. Well, for DNA, one of the things that was definitely highlighted when I was a teenager was to follow a career of writing, which of course is something that's come to me slightly later in my time with you,
yeah.
But no question about it that that is an area where I'm comfortable. I mean, not writing everything, but writing in general, I think, on a subject matter that I am happy with. And understand about. I mean, it doesn't matter if I don't know a lot about it because I research, and so. But actually, writing, I've come to realize is quite good for me to do. And I suppose. Sorry, what was the question again? Because I just looked down to see what it actually said on this thing I had done, and it said to be a writer or journalist. And of course, that's the one thing I'd never want to be, is a journalist. But I get that. In fact, you research and you pursue and you find the answers and so forth. I can see how that came out of that report.
But you do have a gift, I think, Carol. I mean, I've been able to, many times over the last 15 years, and I think particularly recently, give you an outline. And you've all, with the high level idea, and you've always been able to write something that is pretty good and is easy to edit. And frankly, it's got better and better over the last while. A lot more pinpointed, easy to work with, and it's no doubt that's a gift. And your talents are, you have the talents for that, being creative and reflective, spontaneous. You're able to put something together pretty quickly.
Yeah, but the key there to that, and it always has been, is knowing the framework. Blank sheets of paper don't please me. I mean, I like to think, as far as I'm concerned, Carol, write me something on, well, as we're talking about it now, diversity and inclusion. That's all Leon said. Bang. And that was it. Write me something on the veterans. Bang. That was something. But if it's find a new guide for next month, I mean, obviously with my relationship with the business, of course I would be able to find something, but it makes it much easier. As soon as I'm given a headline, I'm already thinking of the content. And by the time I come off that conversation, I've probably formulated the various paragraphs. And I think I know that to be a skill I've got. But don't give me the blank sheet of paper.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, all leaders need to be led. And I think, what I know, and I've said that to Leon with the booklets, particularly that you write, and you and I do have calls here and there. Maybe we should have more, but pretty easy for me to dictate something into Zoom.
That was so good for me.
Yeah, but look at the product. Look at the product that came back. It was brilliant.
Yeah. That was a good thing for me.
Yeah. So, but I think that if we take it that a key part of your identity is writing, is behavioral writing. And that's partly why I'm doing these identity interviews and is our coaching on using the TIPS principle of talents, identity, purpose, and significance. I think we know from the business DNA profiles that your talents are creative. Is one, you're reflective, you're spontaneous, you like working in the team. So writing fits in all of that. And if I said to you, Carol, would you feel that you're more confident, stronger, have a bigger impact through writing than through one-on-one coaching of a person?
I would say it would be about 50-50. You see, I am not coaching for you, for the business, but I am coaching in my private life. And so if I were to have to coach, I know I could help people achieve what it is they want to achieve, because I already do it in a church way. I'm already used in that way. So, but because we haven't gone into the coaching aspect, if you sent me somebody who was having some challenges, all I would need to do is to look at their profile, and I know that I could encourage them and come up with some ideas of how they could manage themselves and make themselves more successful. I know I could do that because I already do it, but I have never been asked to do it for the business. So it is something that if you go down that road, that I would be more than happy to do. But in the meantime, what I'm asked to do is all the writing, and so there is some encouraging, because I do that with the team in the background, if that makes sense. So I would say probably it's a question of what am I required to do right now. And if it were different, it would be 50-50. I'd be as happy to do the writing and hopefully skilled, and also coaching and mentoring people, whichever.
If we just said to you, and we'll need to wrap up in a minute.
Yeah.
If we said to you, it's one or the other,
okay.
Which would it be?
I think if it were one,
there's no hidden agenda in that question. This is more about your identity and where you're most confident and prefer to be.
Okay, then it would have to be the writing.
Okay, so that you would rather do. So if that would be the number one thing for you.
That would be the number one thing for me. Yes.
But you would be happy to do coaching if we sent you the coaching assignment.
No question about it. Absolutely.
Okay. But there will be more coaching assignments next year, because Nikki, we're working on the coaching center being built out. We've a little bit focused on the technology, but so I think that's a key point, Carol, that your identity, really as a behavioral writer, right, on topics, because you're able to write on a very broad range, is the number one thing. And that does have a lot of impact. It's not dissimilar for me in that I've really discovered that my gift is much stronger in coming up with the behavioral insights, putting them together, coming up with solutions through the behavioral insights. And we've developed new ones, over time, is stronger for me than the actual mentoring and facilitation part.
Right.
That's where my greatest impact is. So that's where my identity is. Yeah. So yours is in the writing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in fact, we came out with Leon's is in diversity and inclusion, right? Managing diversity. And that's, that's for a whole lot of reasons. So, I think this exercise is very powerful, Carol.
Yes, I agree. I think it is.
So I'm going to say thank you for participating. I think this has been a great exercise just to spend time with you.